Well, this is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. In the meantime, we've just heard more from the US President Donald Trump posting on Truth Social about his phone call tomorrow. Here's what he has said then. Tomorrow morning, I'll be speaking to President Putin concerning the war in Ukraine. Many elements of a final agreement have been agreed to, but much remains. Thousands of young soldiers and others are being killed. Each week brings 2,500 soldier deaths from both sides, and it must end now. I look very much forward to the call with President Putin. So that line, many elements of a final agreement have been agreed to, will certainly alarm some. Question is, once again, if Europe and Ukraine are being excluded from these discussions. But no doubt we will get more and get a full readout of that phone call after it takes place tomorrow. Well, hello there, watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the columnist and broadcaster Steve Richards and the FT's Whitehall editor Lucy Fisher. Welcome and great to see both of you.
Thank you.
So as ever, let's take a look at the front pages, shall we? Starting with the Eye, which looks ahead to the expected announcement of disability benefit cuts tomorrow, suggesting the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, still has not convinced some Cabinet colleagues that the changes should go ahead. Checks on sick benefit claimants to increase. That is the headline for The Times, with more details of what to expect. It's D-Day for benefit cuts as Starmer faces a growing tide of opposition. That's in The Guardian. On a similar note, The Express says a 40 billion tax raid disaster is killing growth. The Telegraph quotes the leader of the Conservative Party, net zero is impossible by 2050, as Ms Badenoch drops the target over fears of bankrupting Britain. Daily Mail also, with that story, their headline, Kemi, net zero by 2050, impossible. According to the Metro, the state of Britain's roads is so bad that it would take 12 years and £17 billion to fix them properly. The FT reports that the Financial Conduct Authority has fined the investment banker Chris Benodi £1.8 million and banned him from holding any roles in the sector over claims of sexual misconduct, which he denies. The Sun has an exclusive and reports on the love life of former One Direction star Louis Tomlinson, as it's rumoured he's dating Strictly's Zara McDermott. And the Star isn't happy about the computer-generated dwarves in the new Snow White film. So Steve and Lucy are here. Plenty on net zero and Kemi Badenoch. Also plenty on what to expect come D-Day for benefit cuts. You take us through, starting with The Guardian then, Lucy.
Well, it is D-Day tomorrow. We've had a week now of briefings about what's to be expected. We think it's cuts of up to around £6 billion, with £1 billion or so of that ploughed back into reform of the system. In essence, all-out war has broken out in the ranks of the Labour Party about these proposals to cut the welfare bill, including the way that these cuts will fall. The biggest reduction in spending will come on disability and incapacity benefits. And opposition to this goes right up to the Cabinet. We know there was a pretty stormy meeting last week. We've had lots of backbenchers be vocal that they think this goes against Labour's traditional values. And I think that the messaging has been very muddy. This has been really, the focus has been around on savings for the Treasury, rather than this being more a moral crusade to ensure that people don't end up on the scrap heap, as it were, but are helped into work to find the dignity, structure and purpose that can come with having a job.
Well, today they said it was a moral duty, wasn't it, to sort out welfare spending, which is going up massively, as are those who are on sickness and disability benefits. Massive rise we've seen since COVID. So
Yes.
Is that the right area to target, whether it's moral or not?
Well, when you start targeting welfare, you end up facing tough decisions and many potential victims wherever you go in this area. There's a very good quote on that Guardian front page where, because the question is this being Treasury-driven? Or is this, as you were saying, is it a moral crusade that work is a good thing and we should get people into work? And there's this guy who was a former member of the elevated OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibilities, committee, who is quoted as saying, we've got ourselves into a frankly ridiculous position where we're doing fiscal fine-tuning to control the OBR. So it's as if the OBR is this wild thing that has to be tamed by this weak, pathetic government. And that, to me, conjures up the issue. It was clearly started, in a way, by the Treasury, who wanted to find savings and were briefing about 6 billion cuts. Then it becomes a kind of like a sort of Beveridge-style welfare crusade. So where, can it be both? And then, you get reports over the weekend that they're panicking and cutting back on some of it. It all seems to be being implemented chaotically, and this is always tricky, always ambitious. The Labour government in '97 got into all sorts of difficulties. Tony Blair ended up sacking Harriet Harman, who was in charge of this, and Frank Field, her once revered junior. And I don't see much sign of really deep thought. If there had been deep thought, they should have announced on day 2 of this government they're going to do a big welfare review and then come up with proposals, and then the Treasury can weigh in.
But I mean, is it going to be like that because it's going to be a green paper? That does allow discussion, changes and discourse, doesn't it?
If they don't get so hemmed in that concessions look weak, So if Keir Starmer, I'm sticking with this, Rachel Reeves, I'm an iron chancellor, my fiscal rules cannot yield to anything in this world, and then they change, then it becomes all about, they're weak. So they've got to be very careful. But you're right about this. This is a green paper is not as strong as a white paper. In theory, there's scope for consultation.
Yes, and in terms of the debate and, that even today people are asking, has this actually been signed off? The Telegraph tells us that Starmer refuses to back down. He'll press ahead with plans for this 6 billion of benefit cuts. And the Eye as well, suggesting that Angela Rayner, Yvette Cooper, Lucy Powell are among those raising concerns. The Eye understands cabinet sceptics have yet to be won over, and Kendall herself is unable to say she has collective agreement on the green paper. I mean, ultimately, does that actually matter?
Well, look, I think at this stage in the Parliament, with a majority as colossal as Sir Keir Starmer has, he's going to be able to push this through. And I think one of the key questions has been in the past day or so is about whether these changes will need to be put to a vote. One of the most damaging pushback against proposals was to freeze the level of the personal independence payment, PIP, which is paid to people, including those in work, with some of the most severe disabilities, rather than to raise it in line with inflation. Now, we understand they're not going to do that, but they are going to change the eligibility criteria of PIP so that around 1 million fewer people will be entitled to it, including people who have problems washing, problems eating, problems remembering to go to the loo. So it is, quite an extreme change. But our understanding as of today is that there will be a vote on that. So this could still, shake down as quite a big rebellion for Starmer in the Commons, even if he's able to push it through. And I think that pushback in the cabinet and the fact there hasn't been sign off yet also speaks to why we're having this announcement this week rather than last week. Initially, I think we were expecting to hear more about that. But for me, I think we also need to zoom out a bit further, not looking just at the benefit side of the welfare bill. The entire expenditure is going to rise by 25% by the end of this decade. But the big part of that rise is on state pension, because we are an ageing society. And while it is absolutely right to say that illness and incapacity benefit claimants have been going up, the number of people claiming out-of-work unemployment support has been going down. And in part, that is because there have been perverse incentives. It is both more generous and more secure to claim incapacity or health benefits. So there's clearly some kind of retooling of the system needed to remove those perverse incentives. But it's important not to think that the bill is going up and up and up. It's actually been pretty level since the pandemic.
OK, that's interesting. And if you're looking, as we are, for the detail of what might come, I guess the Times wins in terms of some some of the suggested detail. We'll have to wait and see. Liz Kendall, 12:30 in the Commons tomorrow. Sick and disabled benefit claimants face more frequent reassessments in a drive to save the £1 billion that you mentioned there. All sorts of detail in this story. Kendall said a system that deemed millions unfit for any work was terrible for them, their life chances, their incomes and health, and terrible for taxpayers who are paying for an ever-spiralling bill for the cost of failure. Most of the savings will come from making it harder to claim disability benefits which are not linked to work. So, Steve, what is being laid out here?
Yeah, and clearly there have been some concessions in recent days. This was going to be announced last week, but I think Keir Starmer finally paid attention to some of the detail quite late on in this. Say it was a dance with the Treasury, Liz Kendall and her welfare department. And it says, the second paragraph in the Times front page, say they've got the most detailed briefing of the 12:30 statement. People with permanent or degenerative conditions may never have to be reassessed as part of the promised reforms that will guarantee payments to the most severely disabled. But some of the statements are a bit sweeping and confused. So a lot of the people, we've been discussing this before we joined you, who are disabled are in work. And a percentage of their income is provided through this benefit. So, that's one issue. Another issue is what work will be available to those who they're going to try and get back into work. Who will be the mediators who will help them do this? Usually reforms on this scale require upfront investment. You can make huge savings over time, but upfront costs. But they just want to save £6 billion, and so that's the Treasury dimension to it.
She will present two sets of immediate cuts. The Times tells us the highest rate of universal credit incapacity benefits will be reduced, and they say as the Times disclosed last week, it'll become harder for people with all but the most serious disabilities to claim PIPs, as you said, personal independence payments, the main disability benefit. Lots more to come. Let's just very quickly see the Mirror on the way out as well. Don't punish the needy. So their plea, really, unions warning the Prime Minister over plans to slash billions from benefits. Maybe we don't have it. Anyway, there we are. Lots more still to come in the next part of our programme. We'll be back very shortly.
Here we go.
2, 1.
Thank you, Sophie.
The big announcement.
The battle for number 10.
The drone is above us.
It is a chaotic scene.
They've asked us to leave.
It is a clear Labour landslide.
The car is covered in.
Liberated but left in ruins.
A major incident has been declared.
That's when misinformation floods the zone.
It became clear the media weren't welcome.
These extraordinary images.
Must have taken years.
Who wants to talk about politics?
OK, stand by.
I wouldn't be asking it if I didn't think it was a relevant question.
The winner of the 2024 presidential election.
Quite extraordinary events.
There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble. Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
In February 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. Thousands of Russians were drafted. For some, the reality of frontline warfare meant one thing: desertion.
I had a rush of adrenaline. It was a kind of treason.
But they did not escape on their own.
I help people to desert Russian army.
The stakes are high, but for some, there's no other option.
We keep going till Putin's regime is over.
Escaping Putin on Sky News.
The judge made it very clear that she could see no justifiable reason why Sakulas wasn't here facing British justice.
I promised I would get him justice.
Sky News gets the full story first. It's legal to let go.
Set the speed and take the hands off.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts watching us live.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. With me once again, Steve Richards and Lucy Fisher. Steve, should we go to the Daily Telegraph? Kemi Badenoch suggesting that net zero by 2050 is impossible. I'm just reading, actually, that Donald Trump has authorised his administration to immediately begin producing energy with what he has called clean coal, which is the great bogey fuel for those who are trying to fight climate change.
Yeah.
But anyway, what's Kemi Badenoch said?
Well, in a way, the two are connected, aren't they? I mean, Trump is having a big impact on this debate on the right, and Badenoch is in some ways reflecting that sort of Trumpian celebration of, in inverted commas, clean coal. And but what is interesting, and what I think is forgotten sometimes, because you've got Farage saying the same thing, is that there's quite a big section of the Conservative Party who was in favour of ambitious net zero targets. It began in a way with Boris Johnson at that Glasgow
COP26.
COP26. Yeah. And so it's not as if it's just a whole Tory party dancing with Farage, dancing with Trump. There's quite a big section of the Tory party who want these ambitious climate change targets. She's opted to woo the other bit, which is definitely there, which wants to sort of do what she said, that 2050 is impossible. But, you know, if you look at the political spectrum in Britain as a whole, it's not like the United States where Trump is dominating everything. You've got the Lib Dems, the Greens, the Labour Party, the SNP, all still pretty ambitious. So that's, she's getting a big spread. She's the splash in the Daily Mail. She'll be pleased with that. But that's not even representative of the entire Tory party.
And very depressing for those who believe that the consequences of not following net zero will be very much more expensive than actually trying to adapt and plan for it and bring down our carbon levels. In the meantime, we know that Donald Trump is speaking to President Putin tomorrow. It's the second page of the Times, suggesting they're starting to think about dividing up the spoils of Ukraine. We just did that post on Truth Social. Many elements of a final agreement have been agreed to. Talking, you know, on Air Force One about they're going to discuss land and power plants. You know, have they already decided to rip up the parts of Ukraine that Russia holds, do you think?
Well, very alarming news for Kyiv and for European allies tonight that this is being decided without their representatives in the room between these two power brokers who share a worldview, in a sense, about spheres of influence. And this will only, I think, expedite sort of this sense that we are entering a new age of imperialism, leaving the sort of Western paradigm where the nation-state was the primary unit, where respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty was the key thing.
Sorry to rush you, run out of time. Lucy Fisher, Steve Richards, super to see you both, thank you. See you for more on the 11th. Right now, here's the weather.